Welcome to Miss Imani B's classroom. Today we have another episode of Miss B Reads, and I'm Miss Imani B or Miss B. Today it is the beginning of February, and February is a super important month, and it had me really thinking about how I wanted to introduce or choose this read aloud for you all. Do you know why February is important or what we might celebrate in February? There could be many things. Maybe you said Valentine's Day. Maybe it's somebody's birthday. Well, let me tell you what else. February, the entire month, is when we celebrate Black History Month. Have you heard of Black History Month? Yes, it is during this month. Even though for Miss Imani, I celebrate all year. But it is during this month where we really take the time to focus in and celebrate all the contributions given by the Black Americans and the Black people to our communities. It's a chance where we really take the time and see all of the amazing things that they have done. But scholars, did you know that Black History Month wasn't always Black History Month? In fact, it started out as Negro History Week. And it started out as Negro History Week in 1926. Yeah, that was a while ago. It started out as just a week, and it was created by the father of Black history, known as Mr. Carter G. Woodson. Actually, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson is a phenomenal man, and I'm so excited that he is actually going to be the focus of our read aloud today. But let me tell you some things about him and how he got us to have Black History Month. So, before he introduced the idea of Negro History Week, Carter G. Woodson was born to two former enslaved people. Education was really important to him because both of his parents, who were formerly enslaved, meaning they were enslaved before, they used to be an enslaved people, they weren't allowed to read or write. So for him, it was very important that he learned to read and write, and his parents encouraged him to do so. As he was growing up, he went to school just like you do, but because there was a need for him to help his family, he had to drop out. For a while, he was very self-educated, meaning he worked super hard to educate himself, to learn, to read, to gain knowledge, so that by the time he was in like his late 20s, mid to late 20s, he got to go to high school. And instead of finishing high school in 4 years, he finished high school in 2. But he didn't stop there. He continued studying and going to school that he became the only son of enslaved people who was a doctor. Yes, he went on to get his PhD from Harvard University. It was in his time at Harvard that he and some colleagues decided to come up with a Negro History Week. The reason why they chose February, or the week that they chose, was because it was the same week as Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's birthdays. So he decided that would be a good week to have Negro History Week. So in 1926, Negro History Week was initiated. It was accepted. It was seen throughout different states. Later on, about 50 years later, it became, under Gerald Ford, it became Black History Month. And that is why we have Black History Month. But scholars, did you know about Carter G. Woodson? Had you heard about him before? If you hadn't, I'm not going to say that's okay, but you know now. You know now, and it's so great because we have so many resources, scholars, that we can use to learn about more people than the ones we're always told about. Yes, the ones that you've heard about, the people that you've heard about, they are so important, and their contributions are so important. But you have to understand, scholars, that there is diversity and there is variety in the Black experience and in Black history. So Miss Imani B, I challenge you to go out and learn more. Research and learn about different people. Discover new books. Speaking of new books, let me tell you, Today's read aloud is called Carter Reads the Newspaper. It was written by Deborah Hopkinson and illustrated by Tate. I'm going to read the back blurb before we get started. Carter G. Woodson didn't just study history. He changed it. The boy who learned about the world by reading newspapers grew up to become the father of Black history. I'm so excited to read this book. I hope you are too. Let's get started. Carter Reads the Newspaper, written by Deborah Hopkinson, illustrated by Tate. Every February, we celebrate Black History Month. It's a time to honor heroes like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King Jr. But there's one hero we sometimes forget. Carter G. Woodson didn't help people escape from slavery, start a bus strike, or lead a movement of millions. Yet without him, we might not have Black History Month. This is his story. Carter was born on a small farm in Virginia in 1875, 10 years after the end of the Civil War. Carter's parents, James Henry and Ann Eliza, were born into slavery, and Carter grew up hearing about their lives. The stories they told weren't part of any history book, but Carter kept them in his heart. James Henry had run away from his master to join the Union Army and fight for freedom. Times were hard, though. After the war, James Henry worked on the railroad, saving enough to buy a few acres of worn-out land. Most years, the crops brought in $100 or less. James Henry Woodson. Ann Eliza was unbelievably brave. When she was a girl, her master decided to sell her mother. Ann Eliza asked him to sell her instead. That way, her mother wouldn't have to leave her other 5 children. But no one offered enough money for Ann Eliza, so her master sold her mother and 2 little brothers instead. Ann Eliza didn't see them again until after the Civil War. She never forgot the horror of standing on the auction block. Ann Eliza Riddle Woodson. Carter's parents struggled to feed and clothe 7 children, especially in winter and early spring. Food was scarce. Carter, the youngest, once said, "We would leave the table hungry to go to the woods and pluck the persimmons." Many times he had to jump into bed early on Saturday nights so his mother could wash his only pants and shirt for church the next day. Carter could only attend school 4 months each year. The rest of the time he was needed to work on the farm. Learning didn't happen just at school. James Henry taught his children to stand up for themselves and take pride in who they were. He gave Carter the courage to look anyone in the eye and declare, "I am your equal." And though Carter's father couldn't read or write, he believed in being an informed citizen, so he asked Carter to read the newspaper to him. The newspapers weren't easy to come by. Sometimes Carter read from old ones that had been used to wrap up food or packages. Reading the newspaper gave Carter his first glimpse of the wider world. Carter longed to go to high school, but his family needed him to earn money. When he was 15, he hired himself out to nearby farms, working long hours under the hot sun. He also drove a garbage wagon. High school would have to wait. Carter's older brother, Robert, found good paying work in the coal mines of West Virginia. Carter decided to join him there. Mining was grueling work for a boy not yet 17. It was dangerous. Once, a piece of slate came crashing down on Carter's head. He never forgot his time in the mines. Years later, Carter said, "I am a coal miner and I can take anything." In this harsh place, Carter met a man named Oliver Jones. You'd have to look hard to find Oliver's name in a history book. But in that small mining camp in Fayette County, West Virginia, Oliver did something important. He changed one life, and that life changed many. Oliver Jones. Like Carter's father, Oliver was a Civil War veteran who believed in education. As a soldier who had been at the Battle of Appomattox on the final day of the Civil War, Oliver had fought for freedom and equality. He was still willing to do his part to further the cause, said Carter. Each evening, after working in the mines, Oliver threw open the doors of his little house to the other miners. He made his home a reading room, filling it with books by African American writers and with newspapers from all over the country. He sold ice cream and fruits, all at prices the men could afford. At first, Carter just went for the food, but that changed. Carter said, "When Oliver Jones learned that I could read, he soon engaged me to inform him and his friends as to what was in the daily newspapers." Carter was happy to oblige. He liked reading the newspaper. "Besides," he said later, "I always enjoyed nice things to eat." Carter admired Oliver. He was a well-educated man, but he could neither read nor write, said Carter. He learned through others. Carter began to learn in the same way. Carter had longed for school. Life at Oliver's tea room turned out to be school of a different kind. Whenever Oliver and the other miners had questions about something Carter read in the newspaper, it was Carter's job to research the answers. If a Civil War veteran was in the news, Oliver wanted to know all about the man. "I had to look him up in the books, inform my friends as to what battles he had fought," said Carter. If there was a question about economics, politics, or a new law, it was up to Carter to find out all about it in the newspaper and explain it to his friends. Carter was inspired by Oliver and this circle of men committed to freedom, equality, and knowledge. Men whose own life stories would never be in history books. And so the seeds of Carter's own life work began to grow. My interest in penetrating the past of my people was deepened. Carter worked in the mines for 3 years. When he was 20, he moved home to Virginia to start high school. He finished in just 2 years. Carter went on to college and became a teacher. He continued to study and work, earning a master's degree when he was 33. Then, when Carter was 37, he earned a PhD in history from Harvard University, the second African American to do so. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first. Carter was the first and only Black American whose parents had been slaves to receive a doctorate in history. At Harvard, so the story goes, one of Carter's professors said that Black people had no history. Carter remembered his father's pride, his mother's courage, and Oliver's determination to learn. He remembered reading the newspaper. Carter spoke up. "No people lacked a history," he said. The professor challenged Carter to prove him wrong. For the rest of his life, Carter did just that. In 1926, he established Negro History Week. Later, it became Black History Month. Carter chose the second week of February to mark the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. Today, our entire nation celebrates Black History Month, and we honor Dr. Carter G. Woodson as the father of Black history. But in 1926, Carter was alone with his new idea. He had to blaze a trail. Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Sarah Breedlove. He had to spread the word at a time when there were no computers or internet or televisions. So Carter sent pamphlets about Negro History Week out to schools, colleges, churches, and women's clubs. And of course, He sent notices to newspapers. Sojourner Truth, W.E.B. Du Bois, George Washington Carver, Rebecca Lee Crumpler, Peter Salem, Lewis Latimer, Ida B. Wells, Mary McLeod Bethune. The boy who began by reading the newspaper to others transformed the way people thought about history. He fought for a history based on truth, a history that includes all people. Carter G. Woodson didn't just study history, he changed it. And we can too. The end. Wow, scholars. I hope you learned as much as I did. There were a lot of things in this book that I really enjoyed that I could really take away and apply to my life. I hope that Dr. Carter G. Woodson's life inspires you to learn history, to go after history, to go after your dreams, and just to do the things that you want to do and that you believe in. Let Dr. Carter G. Woodson not be the only new person that you learn about this Black History Month or this year. Take the time to find new books, to find new stories, to discover amazing people who've done amazing things. It doesn't always have to be the same people, and that's okay. Go out and explore. Find out about the new and amazing and different heroes in Black history and beyond that have done so much for you. So many things that you might not even know. So many different inventions, so many different risks that were taken. Go out and explore. Let your brain grow. Until next time, bye!